I could understand why some of these things were considered objectionable, but the crude method of confiscation was of obvious self-interest. The opportunity to put my fix in presented itself quickly and indirectly through another enlightening and unexpected incident. One afternoon, on returning from field exercises, I cleaned up and started, as was my routine, for the laundry area to wash the clothing I had worn that day. I felt it was easier to do my laundry on a daily basis, rather than doing the week's accumulation, as recommended in our regulations. For some reason I've never been able to understand, a guy named Shepard, who was about 30 in my size, decided to play boogeyman. As I was coming around a corner building where he jumped out at me. Responding automatically, I dropped what I was carrying, pulled my knife, and slashed. I only nicked his hand, but he became hysterical and started running for the DI's quarters, screaming he was being murdered. Thinking I was in trouble and knowing there was little I could do about it until it developed, I decided to go ahead and do my laundry. I didn't have long to wait before a member of my platoon came and said Corporal Polk wanted to see me. I told the messenger to tell the corporal I would be there shortly. I thought, what the fuck, WTF, I might as well assume an innocent position because that was to be my defense. After washing and hanging up my clothes to dry, I headed back to the hut to drop off my supplies. As I entered, I was met with cold silence by my St. Louis people, but was greeted warmly by Joe and his Chicago friends who smiled and held their thumbs up. From this, I knew clearly, without being told, that the scuttlebutt was out and sides were being drawn up as to who was with or against me. This was the second time I had experienced a negative attitude from my own group. The first occurred on the train coming to California. I attributed this to sour grapes because of my scoring with Little Mary from Rosemead. I found it amusing that these bastards had the gall to entertain the idea that I would be impressed or affected by whatever they thought. Most of them I had long since classified as being gutless and severe mental retards. I have always appreciated the beneficial side effect of misfortune or scandal because it quickly derats a ship. On my way to Corporal Polk's quarters, I stopped by the latrine to remove $50 from my money belt. I thought this was the time to kill two birds with one stone. I would make my deal to be left alone, while paying off for the Shepard problem. Reporting in, I found Corporal Polk sitting at his desk appearing to be in an angry state. Without returning my military courtesy, he demanded to know what took me so long. I explained I had finished the laundry I was doing when I received his message, because I wasn't under the impression his summons were immediate. He replied all summons from him were immediate and belligerently demanded to know what I had to say about cutting Shepard. I described how I was walking along, minding my own business, when Shepard jumped out at me. I claimed that Shepard, through his own conduct, was responsible for the slight cut he received on his hand. Corporal Polk was unimpressed with my explanation and said he wanted my knife, and was going to put me on captain's report, which could result in a general court-martial for assault with a deadly weapon. For a second, this information stunned me, then a cold, quiet rage abruptly took command. Smiling, I told him I felt it's best that he forget such stupid nonsense because an investigation, resulting from such a report, could only destroy his cushy DI career. I told him I was underage and, therefore, immune from any disciplinary action other than being sent home once this fact became known. Surprise and disbelief was written all over his face. He had been a DI for so long, he unrealistically assumed when dealing with recruits that his power over them was God-given and absolute. For a recruit to audaciously advise and threaten him, instead of quaking in his presence, was enough to give him a heart attack. Wasting no time for him to mentally recover from the shock, I proceeded to clearly spell it out, telling him if he caused me any trouble by foolishly filing such a report, I would file one myself charging him as being a common drunk. Informing him that a simple inquiry by polling the platoon would verify this fact, as it was generally acknowledged his breath carried more authority than his rank. I also pointed out that Sergeant Wood, who headed up the platoon, would be held accountable for subordinate behavior, so he should be consulted before any action was taken. For a few minutes, which seemed like hours, the only sound in the hut was Polk's heavy breathing. As I watched and waited for something to happen, it suddenly struck me there was a physical likeness between him and my stepfather, and I thought it strange I'd not noticed it before. Both were about 35, 5 feet 9 inches, weighed about 165, dark, straight hair, olive complexion, thin-faced, introverted, and a lack of humor. While comparing similarities, Corporal Polk got up from his little desk and began walking around the room, making a coughing sound as if he had something stuck in his throat. Finally getting himself together, he sat back down and with an unexpected forced half grin, which again reminded me of my stepfather, asked what I thought should be done about this matter. Replying to my recommendation was as originally stated, no report and we both forget it. As to Shepard, I suggested he be called in and informed that my knife was confiscated and that I was going to be assigned various shit details as punishment. This, I explained, would placate the squeaking little bastard, especially if he was strongly admonished for being responsible by deliberately instituting this incident. By Corporal Polk's expression of relief, I concluded my advice was not only well received as a respite from my threats but also as a means of silencing Shepard. I knew all as well when Corporal Polk, as a sign of appeasement, opened his desk and offered me a couple of Babe Ruth candy bars that he, no doubt, appropriated from someone else. Accepting, I thanked him, saying that one good thing deserves another, and placed my knife wrapped in a $50 bill on his desk. A corporal's monthly pay in 1942 was about $63. He looked at the bill like it was something he never saw before and asked if it was real. Assuming it was and that there were more like it, should he be interested in making a deal? Telling him I wished to remain a Marine and see it through, in spite of the fact I was not gung-ho. It was worth money to me if I could avoid much of the mundane and irksome exercises and just be involved in the important training, which could be of value later. I informed Corporal Polk I was in the CCC and understood many things relating to service life, including knowing my right foot from my left. He assured me something could be done, but I would have to trust him to handle it. Thanking him for his consideration, I said I should get back to my area for dinner. While walking back, I went over every detail of my confrontation with Polk, and felt sure I had him by the balls where he couldn't wiggle. This experience once again convinced me I would not find a pony in the Marines if Polk was representative. I shuddered to think what could have happened to me, and no doubt did happen to other innocents caught in a Mickey Mouse situation. These overblown military parasites wouldn't think twice about railroading anyone into a federal prison via a general court-martial and dishonorable discharge. In fact, they would feel it was their sworn duty to be instrumental for maintaining esprit de corps by making examples of those they thought might defile their glorious Marine traditions. In fairness, I later learned that all services during this period operated pretty much with an absolute prejudicial attitude, and their legal processes were usually predetermined and of force. I realized if I was adamant on remaining in this archaic outfit, it was essential I take precautions to preserve myself mentally, so as not to be warped by it. This experience could be handled in the same proven manner I used when dealing with my home environment. I would simply ignore and disregard everything not being relevant to my interest. Arriving at my hut, I found Joe waiting anxiously to hear how it went, and he was surprised when I told him there was no problem. It seemed Shepard was blabbing it around that I was going to be up for assault. I said Shepard was a fink and so was anyone else who sided with him. Joe readily agreed and invited me to throw in with him and his friends. I gladly accepted. How could I refuse an opportunity to be associated with such men of taste? The next morning at assembly, my name was called and Corporal Polk instructed me to fail out and report to the mess sergeant for KP duty. As the platoon marched away, I thought they'd go with my $50. Polk must have taken me literally when I told him to tell Shepard that I would be assigned shit details, and having no other choice than do what I was ordered, I headed for the mess hall.
Thanks for watching. Make sure you subscribe to the channel and like the video.